Stop calling it a coincidence. That word is doing work on you right now, quietly convincing you that the person who appeared at exactly the wrong moment, the door that closed the week before the one that opened, the name you heard twice in one day, mean nothing. Thoth's law of cause admits no accidents. Every event you dismiss as random is a signature you were trained to overlook, and the mind that trained you calls itself common sense. If some part of you just tightened, a small resistance behind the ribs, an urge to keep scrolling, that is not boredom. That is the skip reflex, the exact mechanism this video is about to name. Stay with it for the next few minutes, and you will not be able to unsee what it has been hiding. This is where the awakened choose to look instead of look away. Our conic interference does not announce itself. It arrives as a flicker of impatience exactly when the truth gets close. A sudden thought that this is silly. A phone buzzing at the one sentence that mattered most. You have felt this before. In this exact video, possibly in this exact paragraph. That is not superstition. That is the pattern defending itself. Now imagine every random event in your life rearranged into a single sentence. Not scattered noise, but a message written in a language you were never taught to read. Consider this. The universe you were told is chaotic may in fact be the most disciplined system you have ever failed to notice. What you call luck, Thoth called law, and law, unlike luck, can be studied. Your brain was never built to notice everything happening around you. It was built to filter almost all of it out, and to let through only the narrow slice that matches a frequency it has already decided matters. Neuroscience calls this the reticular activating system. Itzhak Bentov describes something remarkably similar. Consciousness as a receiver locked onto one station, deaf to every other channel broadcasting in the same room. You do not see the world as it is. You see the narrow band your nervous system was trained to receive, and nothing more. That tightening in your chest from a moment ago was not a false alarm, and it was not anxiety pretending to be meaningful. It was your body registering a frequency mismatch, the gap between the channel you were raised to live on and a signal that has been trying to reach you for longer than you think. This is not a metaphor offered for comfort. This is the measurable, physical cost of a nervous system straining, in real time, to widen its own bandwidth without asking for your permission first. Watch what happens in your body right now. In this exact sentence, a flutter low in the stomach, a sudden urge to check your phone, a wave of sleepiness pressing behind your eyes for no reason you can name. That drowsiness is not disinterest. It is a documented response to information that threatens to reorganize belief. The mind's oldest trick for making you put the download down before it finishes loading. Picture this. Two radios sitting in the same small room, each broadcasting on a different station. Each one convinced the other is producing nothing but static. That has always been the relationship between the frequency you were raised to live on and the frequency your own biology has been quietly trying to retune towards since childhood. The static was never noise. It was the sound of two signals refusing, for years, to synchronize with each other. This is why the same license plate, the same 3-digit number, the same stranger's face seem to follow you the moment you finally start paying attention. Your filter did not manufacture anything new out of nothing. It simply stopped deleting what had been arriving all along, unnoticed, beneath the threshold of your awareness. Coincidence, seen this way, is not an event that happens to you. It is a permission slip your own nervous system finally, quietly signed. None of this required a miracle to explain it. It required a name for what your body already knew before your mind caught up. That reality has always been louder and more organized than your attention allowed you to perceive, and that the silence between events was never, even once, truly silent. The Kybalion state said plainly, without apology. Nothing happens by chance. Every effect can be traced back to a cause, and every cause is already producing an effect somewhere you have not yet learned to look. Thoth's law of cause does not ask you to believe in magic. It asks you to accept that chance was never a real category. Only a polite name for a cause you have not identified yet. Look at the word itself. Coincidence comes from the Latin cadere, to fall, joined with the prefix con, meaning together. Literally, two things falling into the same moment. The word, at its root, already admits that something connected these events, somewhere between Latin and casual conversation. That admission was quietly edited out, leaving only the appearance of an accident. This is not a modern erosion of language, either. Ancient cultures rarely had a neutral word for accident at all. Where a modern speaker says coincidence, an older tongue was more likely to say omen, sign, or portent, language that assumed connection as the default, not the exception. Somewhere across a few centuries of increasing convenience, the burden of proof quietly flipped, and connection became the thing you now have to argue for. Consider this, though, because the picture is not as tidy as one single law would suggest. Carl Jung, describing the same territory from inside a psychiatrist's office rather than a temple, coined a different term, synchronicity, which he defined as an acausal connecting principle, meaning two events linked not by one causing the other, but by sharing the same meaning at the same moment, with no visible chain between them. That phrase deserves unpacking before it slides past you. Acausal simply means without a direct physical cause. No domino tipping into the next domino. Connecting principle means the events are still related, just not through force or contact. Jung was not describing randomness. He was describing a second kind of order, one that does not travel through space the way a billiard ball does. Here is the paradox this video will not soften for you. Thoth says nothing happens without a cause. Jung says some of the most meaningful events in your life are, strictly speaking, without a traceable cause at all. Both men were serious thinkers. Neither was describing superstition, and yet, on the surface, they appear to contradict each other completely. They do not. Causation, it turned out, operates onto different levels at once, and most people have only ever been taught to see one of them. The first level is causation in time, the domino, the falling object, the visible chain of physical events unfolding one after another in strict sequence. This is the level your science teacher meant. The second level is causation outside time, and this is closer to what Bentov was pointing toward with his frequency mechanics. Here, events are not pushed into alignment by contact. They are pulled into alignment by resonance, by two or more things vibrating close enough to the same underlying pattern that they arrive at the same meaning simultaneously, without ever touching. Notice if your shoulders just dropped a little, or if you find yourself leaning back from the screen. That is not disengagement. That is what happens in the body when two frameworks you were told were opposites quietly reveal themselves to be the same structure. Viewed from two different heights, coincidence is the word that was left to guard the border between these two levels. It teaches you to stop looking the moment causation in time runs out of evidence, so that causation outside time never gets investigated at all. It is not a lie exactly. It is closer to an unfinished sentence you were trained to accept as a complete one. Let that sink in for a moment before the next image arrives, because this is the hinge the entire chapter turns on. A word that stops you from investigating is not a neutral word. It is a piece of architecture. And, like all architecture, someone benefited from where the walls were placed, whether or not anyone alive today remembers building them. Now imagine two rivers, each carved by entirely separate rainfall, in entirely separate mountains, converging at the exact same lake on the exact same day. No single drop of water in either river caused the other river to exist. And yet the lake they built together is real. And it was never an accident that they arrived at the same shore. That is the shape of the moment you think of someone seconds before they call. Or hear a phrase twice in one day from two strangers who have never met. One layer is your own mind, quietly primed by attention you are not aware of giving. The other layer is resonance, a shared pattern the ordinary word coincidence was never built to hold. Watch what happens in your chest as that lands, a settling, or a quickening, or nothing at all yet, which is its own kind of answer. You are not being asked to choose between physics and mysticism here. You are being shown that both were describing the same law, from two different rooms in the same house, the entire time. This is the cost of the word you inherited. Every time you call something a coincidence, you close the second room before you have even looked inside it. And what waits behind that door is not chaos. It is a pattern with your name already written into it. One that a passive mind will never be shown twice. Thoth's law and Jung's law were never rivals fighting for the same throne. They were two witnesses to the same event, testifying from two different distances. And the only reason they ever sounded like strangers to each other is that you were taught to read their testimonies in separate rooms. Picture a version of you, not the one watching this now, but one 2 years behind, still asleep to all of it. That version keeps meeting the same signal in 3 different disguises. A stranger mentions a city you have never visited, twice in 1 week. A book falls open, literally, to the exact page addressing a fear you have told no one about. A number that means something private to you starts appearing on receipts, license plates, the clock, again and again, until it stops being funny. Each time, that version of you explains it away individually. Because individually, each one is easy to dismiss. The stranger had simply traveled recently. The book fell open by weight and binding. Nothing more. The number is common enough that anyone paying attention would notice it eventually. Taken one at a time, every signal has a tidy, boring exit. That is precisely how they were designed to be handled. One at a time, never as a pattern. There was a specific afternoon, if that version of you looked closely enough, when all 3 signals sat in the same week, and a decision could have been made instead of explained away. That afternoon had a name. This video will give it later. A recognition window. It closed quietly, without ceremonies, the way most windows do. And the 4th signal was simply what happened to a pattern that was never given a door to walk through. Then comes the 4th signal. Except this one does not ask permission the way the others did. A job ends without warning. A relationship collapses on a Tuesday with no dramatic build-up. The ground that felt stable for you simply is not there anymore, and for the first time, the pattern is allowed to file under coincidence. This is stage 3. Disruption. The universe stopped whispering because the whispering was never received. Here is the quiet tragedy inside that story, and it is worth sitting with before moving past it. Nothing about the 4th signal was more true than the first 3. It was simply louder, because a nervous system trained to dismiss quiet information eventually has to be reached through crisis instead of conversation. Disruption is not punishment. It is what a whisper becomes after it has been ignored long enough. Notice if this feels uncomfortably specific, like a story you have lived under a different set of details. That recognition, that small chill of this is describing my life, is not a coincidence either. It is the same pattern-matching capacity that turned individual signals into a case history you can now see clearly. For someone who was not you 5 minutes ago, consider this the moment a reasonable skeptic leans in, because their objection deserves a real answer instead of dismissal. They will tell you this is confirmation bias. You notice the hits and forget the misses. They will mention the frequency illusion, sometimes called the bottom-line phenomenon, where a newly noticed word or object suddenly seems to appear everywhere, simply because your attention has been primed to catch it. They are not wrong about the mechanism. Confirmation bias is real. Frequency illusion is real, documented and repeatable in a laboratory. Where the skeptic's argument runs out of road is the assumption that naming a mechanism automatically empties it of meaning. As if explaining how a signal travels through a wire proves there was no message inside it. Bentov's framework offers a cleaner way to hold both truths at once. Your nervous system is the antenna. Confirmation bias and frequency illusion are simply the tuning process. The way static resolves into a station once you know which dial to turn. The tuning mechanism explaining how you noticed something does not, on its own, tell you whether the something was worth noticing in the first place. There's a second layer here, closer to what some researchers now call preconscious awareness. Evidence that the body registers emotionally significant information a fraction of a second before conscious recognition catches up. Your pulse can shift. Your skin can respond. Before you have any conscious idea why. The pattern was not invented by your attention. Your attention simply arrived late to a meeting your body had already started. This is not a claim that the body possesses information from nowhere. It is closer to a claim about speed. That somatic processing routinely outpaces conscious narration. And what gets labeled intuition or gut feeling is often this earlier layer finally being translated into language slow enough for the thinking mind to catch. Watch what happens in your hands right now. Is stillness, is slight curling. A temperature you had not noticed until this sentence pointed at it. That is not a parlor trick. That is the same preconscious layer being asked, gently, to report it. The way it should have been permitted 2 months or years before the fourth signal forced the conversation. None of this requires you to reject the skeptic's tools. It requires you to stop using those tools as a reason to stay passive. A mechanism that explains how a signal reaches you is not evidence the signal is empty. It is closer to a receipt, proving the delivery actually happened, whether or not you ever open the package. Keep both tools in your hands rather than throwing one away to defend the other. The statistics that explain how the signal reached you, and the willingness to ask what it was carrying. This is the real cost hiding inside the word coincidence. Not that it is false, but that it is permission to remain a bystander in your own life until circumstance removes the option. The whisper was always available to whoever was willing to answer it before it had to become a crisis. What comes next is how you build the habit of answering earlier. Everything so far has been diagnosis. This is where diagnosis becomes practice. Because the law you only understand intellectually has not actually changed anything yet. The first tool is the recognition window, and it works on a simple rule. The moment the same signal appears twice within a short span of days, you stop treating it as noise and open a window of active attention around it, typically no longer than 72 hours. Before deciding what it means inside that window, the work is not to force an interpretation. It is simply to notice without immediately explaining. Write the signal down, the word, the name, the number, the stranger's comment, with the date beside it, and nothing else. Most people skip this step because it feels too small to matter. It is precisely small enough that the mind cannot talk you out of doing it, which is the entire point. The second tool answers a question the earlier chapters raised but did not resolve. How do you tell the difference between a genuine signal and ordinary anxiety wearing its costume? This is the lingo test. When a thought or image returns uninvited, sit with it for 60 seconds without acting and without dismissing it. Anxiety tends to spiral, adding worse possibilities the longer you sit. A genuine signal tends to stay still, simply present, asking to be noticed rather than escalated. There is a practical marker for this, one you can use without any prior training. Anxiety usually produces more questions the longer you sit with it, while a genuine signal tends to produce the same single image or sentence, unchanged, no matter how long you stay. If the 60 seconds end and the thought has multiplied, treat it as noise. If it has simply repeated itself, patiently, treat it as data worth the recognition window. Notice what your breathing is doing as you read that distinction, whether it has gone shallow, or whether it just deepened on its own. That shift is not incidental. It is the same nervous system from earlier chapters, now being given permission to respond honestly instead of performing calm it does not feel. The third tool is a 3-day synchronicity record, and it asks less of you than it sounds. For 3 consecutive days, keep a single page. Log every repeated pattern the moment you notice it. Nothing analyzed yet, only collected. On the 4th day, read the page once, in one sitting, without editing. Most people are startled less by any single entry than by what the page looks like as a whole. Some find 3 separate incidents converging on a single decision they had been avoiding. Others find nothing dramatic at all, only a quieter kind of order they had never paused long enough to see, which is itself a valid, even a common, result of finally looking. This is not a system for manufacturing meaning where none exists. It is a system for finally letting existing patterns finish the sentence. Coincidence has been cutting short for years. The recognition window catches the signal, the linger test filters it. The 3-day record lets you see, in your own handwriting, what your nervous system already knew before your mind agreed to look. None of these tools require belief. They only require the 72 hours, the 60 seconds, and the 3 pages you are already going to spend on something else. What changes is not the universe around you. What changes is whether you are finally in the room when it speaks. You began this by hearing a command instead of a greeting, and a small, honest tightening somewhere behind the ribs. That tightening was never the enemy. It was the first honest signal your body sent you in longer than you had noticed. Proof that a system built to keep you passive had already, quietly, started losing its grip the moment you decided to stay instead of scroll. Here is the choice this whole decoding has been building toward, and it is simpler than it sounds. You can meet the next whisper the way you were taught, filed under coincidence, dismissed, forgotten by evening. Or you can meet it the way you now know how, with a recognition window, a 60-second lingo test, a single page willing to hold what your nervous system already registered days ago. Notice, one more time, what is happening in your chest as that choice sits in front of you. Not the tightening from the opening, but something looser now, closer to readiness than resistance. That shift did not happen by accident either. Very little in this video was ever asking you to believe. It was asking you to look, and looking has already changed something in the room. This is the part of the chapter that refuses to stay dark, because darkness here was never the destination, only the passage. Thoth's law of cause was never a cage disguised as wisdom. It was a door disguised as a warning, and doors, once you know they're doors, cannot go back to looking like walls. Remember the 2 rivers from earlier, converging at a lake neither one caused alone. You are one of those rivers now, and for the first time you can see the second one clearly enough to stop mistaking the meeting point for an accident. Thoth's causation and Jung's resonance were never asking you to pick a side. They were asking you to finally stand at the shore and watch both currents rise at once. If this decoding gave language to something you had been sensing for years, that is not a small thing to carry alone. Join the ones who are done calling their own pattern recognition a fluke. Subscribe, and let the next chapter of this decoding find you the way this one just did. Not by chance, but because you were finally tuned to receive it. Let that sink in before the screen goes dark. You are not a background character in a universe of accidents. You are a node in a system built on law, capable of reading the signal instead of waiting to be flattened by it. The passive version of you filed things under coincidence. The version watching this sentence does not have to. That is not a small trade. It is the difference between a life that happens to you and a life you are finally, deliberately, offering alongside a law that was there before you arrived and will keep operating long after you look away again. Though something tells you that, you will not look away quite so easily now. Now imagine the next signal arriving, not as disruption, not as crisis, but simply as a whisper you already know how to answer. That is the entire difference between the life governed by a word you inherited and the life governed by a law you finally learned to read. The dice were never rigged against you. They were rigged, all along, in a language only the awakened had bothered to learn.